if there is the truth and you and I are fallen people, then of necessity, there will be times when we disagree.
This life is about learning and about change and growth, and you can't do that if you are perfect.
If there is nothing that is incongruent with our belief system and the way that we are, that we're probably not leaning into it enough. It's always going to be more comforting to sit on the couch and watch the football game than it is to go to church. You know what I mean? Like
That's
just
for sure. I could stand by that statement.
And that discomfort, a lot of us read as a lack of the Spirit.
Yeah.
Okay, the Spirit is not testifying of this.
I've been learning a lot more recently that has shown me just how little I know.
So this is one of the reasons I think prophets are so important. When we pit ourselves against what the doctrine that they have taught, and we say, oh, you know what, that doctrine doesn't feel comfortable to me, and that's the Spirit telling me that this isn't right. And so therefore prophets must have just gotten it wrong. And a lot of these people that are teaching apostasy are extremely faith-filled, and they feel like they have this strong connection to the Spirit, and they believe in being kind and loving.
So recognizing that I may have some inconsistencies in some of those doctrines or principles allows me to take the kind of self-reflection and see what do I need to fix in my life or fix in my thinking to more accurately align myself with God. And I can't change that just because I want it to be the way I live my life, whether it's the 10 Commandments that we pretty much all universally live by, or if it's polygamy or, gay rights or abortion or whatever it is.
Abrahamic tests, right? I mean, pushes his people to an edge, and we should expect to be pushed to the edge.
I don't want to be a sheep.
It's kind of a negative connotation in other contexts.
Yeah, I do want to be a sheep. I want to be one of the Lord's sheep. But my natural mindset is I want to rebel against whatever that is. And so, and this fits perfectly in the imagery of being a sheep and Christ being the shepherd. And maybe I'm one of those lost sheep a little more often than I want.
Sometimes we get too bent up over like not keeping the commandments right now, or they're leaving the church right now, or they're doing this, and like all we can do is teach correct principles and let people govern themselves. Yeah.
Welcome everybody to the No Bushel podcast. We are your hosts, Big Ben and the Burning Bushman. We're excited to get into things today.
Today's topic, Kendall is not as aware of this topic. I'm kind of springing this on him. But we're going to be talking, one, about apostasy, but also about how when we have questions or concerns or anger even in relation to certain doctrines, that our first step or our first thought should not be that that's wrong, but to question it, because true religion necessarily produces questions. And I want to get into this a little bit. The idea that when we have something that's hard to grasp with or grapple with, our first instinct can be to push against it or reject it and say, oh, that's wrong. But that logically, when something is true, the truth, okay, we've talked about your truth, my truth versus the truth.
Yep.
If there is the truth and you and I are fallen people, which we know that all mankind is fallen,
which we are,
then of necessity, there will be times when we disagree or think opposite of or are angry or have questions about doctrines, and that we should expect that, not shun it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like this concept. I think you've got a couple examples you wanted to maybe jump into, but my general just first thought as you're talking, I agree with it, that it's the fear of wrestling or the fear of contradiction sometimes can be what leads us down the wrong path rather than the goal to, or the desire to seek what you mentioned the truth is. And we don't want to accept that we're wrong sometimes, which makes it difficult to switch over and change ourselves. But that's my first thought, is this life is about learning and about change and growth, and you can't do that if you are perfect. and know everything.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
In order for there to be a wrestle, I mean, we have to wrestle. We know that's a part of God's plan.
Yeah.
So in preparation for this, I just wrote this statement, okay? This is kind of the concise statement about this. So true religion necessarily produces questions, doubt, and even anger in its adherents at times. If it did not, it could not be true. A religion that never unsettles the soul is not transforming it. It is merely comforting it. Which kind of gets to what
I was
you were just saying.
Yeah, because I think that when I think of my faith and religion, my first instinct is I don't have any like disagreements with the doctrine. But then if I truly didn't have any disagreements, then I would be a much better person, right? And I would be actually living the fullness of the gospel rather than having to repent every day because I make all those mistakes.
And I might call you out a little bit too, because I would almost go a step further.
Yeah.
And say that if there is nothing that is incongruent with our belief system and the way that we are, that we're probably not leaning into it enough.
Yeah, I would
Does that
agree.
make sense?
Yeah, totally. And that's where, yeah, I would agree with that, because I think that we fall into a false sense of security, thinking, well, I'm doing my best, or I'm doing just fine, but that is not the ideal situation that Christ set forth. We are supposed to be ever changing, ever improving, and oftentimes we get into that rut. Excuse me, that routine of where, I'm doing good, so why do I need to worry about the rest of it?
Apathy, which I think is one of the biggest issues we deal with in the church today, is apathy. So we know there's going to be incongruencies. Now there's the repentance side of this. There's just like, okay, there's incongruencies in how I'm living compared to the ideals of living that, okay?
Right.
But I would also extend this to specific doctrines, okay?
Yep. Not
necessarily things that you feel incongruent with, but that are teachings of your church or practices of your church in the past. Okay, so in LDS theology, everybody gets up in arms about polygamy, right?
Yep.
Because it's this like recent history. However, all Christians have to deal with that in their history. We just have it more recent in our history. And so that's something, right, that okay, there's this doctrine here. How does it
fit into the picture?
Yeah, like it doesn't seem like it meshes together properly. And a lot of atheists would say all these horrible things that took place in the Bible are evidence that there is no God, or evidence that you guys are wrong, or evidence that this is inaccurate doctrine. And what I'm saying is actually the fact that there are hard things like that, or doctrines or teachings or things that have happened, is actually a sign that it is true.
Yeah.
Because if religion was something that was just purely comforting, that's when people stop investing in religion, is when it's purely comforting, because it's not transformative. And it's always going to be more comforting to sit on the couch and watch the football game than it is to go to church. You know what I mean? Like that's just
for sure. I could stand by that statement. But again, yeah, that speaks to the point of what you're saying, though, is that is sitting down on the couch watching football transformative? Some may say that to a certain extent,
depending on if BYU is playing or not. Right?
Exactly. But compare that to like real spiritual moments and events that can legitimately transform your life and who you are. That I think we can all pretty easily agree that there is a difference between the two.
So, and this is where wrestling comes in, and kind of the whole purpose of this podcast is to help people stand up, be bold, but also to wrestle with difficult things and to try to make the best case for them, right? And so many things we conflate something that's not true with something that's true, or vice versa. And one of the things in this space of what we're talking about, when we see something that makes us uncomfortable, a doctrine, a teaching, a principle, whatever it is that we're dealing with, we dig our feet in, and that discomfort, a lot of us read as a lack of the Spirit. Yeah. Okay, the Spirit is not testifying of this.
Or telling you this is wrong.
Or telling me that this is wrong. And the way that we talk about the Spirit in most other settings that's often how we describe it, right? Like the fruit of the Spirit is love and joy and peace and all these good things. And so if you're not feeling good about this principle, then it's
Right.
obviously wrong or not good, right? So how do you balance that? And on the flip side of that, sometimes we are invigorated and enlightened and feel good about something. It excites us about something that's not true.
Right.
Okay, so
How do you parse that out?
parsing out the Spirit versus discomfort for the sake of truth.
And I would say that that's going to be different for every individual, right? That's part of learning how the Spirit speaks to you. Some have a real tangible feeling, other it's an emotional state. There's different ways that the Spirit speaks to each individual, and it comes with practice. And again, that's kind of the point of what we're talking about, is the growth and change that we practice getting to know what the Spirit's like. And as you are more and more familiar with it, then it's much easier to recognize, oh, that is the Spirit speaking to me, rather than these are just my own thoughts for good or for bad, one way or the other.
So this is one of the reasons I think prophets are so important, because how do you learn when the Spirit, like when it's actually the Spirit versus not actually the Spirit?
Yeah.
And if you don't have some sort of guardrail or some sort of guiding post, guidepost along the way to check you, to be sure that you're in line with things,
on the right track,
then you can't know for sure, like, maybe that is from the Spirit, maybe it's not.
Right.
So we know that prophets are, we don't claim that prophets are infallible. We know that they're make mistakes, but we also know they're very reliable.
Yes.
And the most reliable when it comes to eternal truth and doctrine, and what has been revealed and what has not been revealed. And so when we pit ourselves against what the doctrine that they have taught, and we say, oh, you know what, that doctrine doesn't feel comfortable to me, and that's the Spirit telling me that this isn't right, and so therefore the prophets must have just gotten it wrong. But then that puts them in this other conundrum, because oftentimes these are people that believe in the prophets, right? Like they believe that they're the leading the Lord's church, and yet, so then they feel like they get this new nuanced approach to prophets. It's like, well, the prophets are right in most things, and they are reliable most of the time, but they still got this thing wrong, and this is why. And then they try to spell out why that was wrong, right?
That's one of the struggles with our prophets being fallible, is we can use that as an excuse to not follow the doctrine that prophet teaches if we don't agree with something that they say. And that's a tricky part. I'll let you keep going, but that's just something that sticks in my head as you're talking.
So, and this can go in various levels, and this is why humility is so important. We have to not have so much hubris that we know that our way is right, especially, and I'm going to, like, specifically, if we are thinking something that is in open opposition to what is taught by church leaders and church prophets. Now, when we pit ourselves against them, I think we need to allow all people some space to have beliefs that maybe don't perfectly fit in, right? Like, I might not fully understand this thing, and I'm okay with not fully understanding this thing, because I know that in time the Lord will either make it right or he will change my understanding of it or whatnot, right? But then there gets a point where we feel so strongly about something that might be against what a prophet is teaching or against current, the eternal doctrine, and we feel so strongly about it that we feel like we need to agitate or create
some kind of rebellion or revolution almost.
And we almost, so I want to get into a specific example of this. Okay. And this is why this has been on my mind, this whole concept. I've had a couple of different things. I'm just going to share one recent example. And this, I've dealt with, church disciplinary things at times and excommunication. And one of the most common things that I've dealt with is specifically apostasy, when people are teaching against church doctrine. And there's been a very recent example. Many people may be aware of this. A lady named Karen Hyatt was excommunicated for apostasy just at the beginning of this month. And she is online now, and she's very charismatic, and she's very faith-filled, okay? And a lot of these people that are teaching apostasy are extremely faith-filled, and they feel like they have this strong connection to the Spirit, and they believe in being kind and loving. This lady, like she makes a good case. She says, she goes through the whole experience with her disciplinary council. She's like, don't be mad at my stake president. Don't be mad at anybody else. They're just doing what church culture has taught them to do. And I'm firm in what I believe and know, but I believe this strongly enough that if I don't teach it, I'm going against the Spirit's teaching to me.
Sure.
And I have to abide by that. And yet, in doing that, she's being excommunicated from the church. Now, what is she being excommunicated for? She is a polygamy denier, and I think we need to allow room for individuals to personally believe and study and ponder on whether, okay, was this actually a thing? Was this not actually a thing? Like, that's fine. But she believes so strongly in this thing that church doctrine is that polygamy is a thing.
Yeah.
And she was advocating for and pushing and teaching and trying to get other members of her ward involved in giving them the evidence that Joseph Smith actually didn't institute polygamy. He only ever taught against polygamy, and that it was just Brigham Young and John Taylor and Wilford Woodruff and Lorenzo Snow, I think, that pushed this polygamy narrative. And you see the battle here, because then it's like, okay, so she's a very nuanced approach, because this lady actually believes in the modern church and the modern beliefs of the church.
And all the other aspects of it.
And all the other aspects of the church. But she believes that Brigham Young was so off base to be able to institute something like plural marriage into the church as a whole as a major doctrine, and yet still believes that the church is true today. Does that make sense? Like, there's this huge major conflict in that.
Well, and the conflict, part of the real conflict that she has is that it sounds like she's trying to bring all of these other people to take away the truthfulness of the gospel and or of this particular doctrine, and bring other people with her rather than just coming to terms with it on her own. Which I will say, whether or not you agree with her or whether or not she is right or wrong, I do have a level of respect for where she's coming from, because it sounds like she's come to this belief on her own and has not allowed that to make her salty towards all the other aspects. Like you said, that she said, don't blame all my church leaders. Like, oftentimes when we see someone that excommunicated or disagrees with the church, they are like almost completely anti everything rather than just whatever that one particular thing. So
they become bitter towards the church.
In that aspect, I have a little bit of respect for her for that, because it sounds like she's kind of sticking to just that one particular topic.
For sure. I actually have very little qualms with how she's going about this. But she is in a position where she was able to believe that this wasn't a thing and still believe that modern prophets were a thing, but then she's promulgating this idea, and that's actually really hard for most people to believe. It's like, okay, if polygamy was taught and it was actually wrong when it was taught, then how can the church today be any truer?
Right.
Does that make sense? Like that concept, which leads to a lot of people leaving the church, and the church is striving to, one, preserve doctrine, teach its and preserve the good name of the church, and yet all these people are now leaving the church because they're seeing this evidence that she claims proves that Joseph Smith didn't actually teach polygamy. So the purpose of this is not to question her claim or to dive into polygamy, but it's a case that I have seen several times. Not just this case. There have been several cases like this that I've seen in the last couple of years, where individuals allow a very specific thing in church history to taint their understanding of church doctrine, and they dive into something and they become so firm and so strong belief in this one aspect that they feel like they have to teach it and they have to promote it because it's liberating and it's going to help the church. And if they don't agitate, then the church will never change. And so this kind of idea that the prophets have it wrong and we need to show them that it's wrong by getting enough of a groundswell to
hopefully change their mind.
To hopefully change their mind
change
so that they see, oh, okay, there's enough people that want this now, we can change this, right? And it just kind of gets the whole...
Doesn't that just sound wrong? Like, I see what you're saying, and I understand how the mental shift I understand how that works, but as you just vocalize what is actually happening, it feels so blatantly obvious. Like, obviously this is not right. You know, having a following over one particular topic to hopefully change the prophet's mind when you believe that the prophet is called of God, it just doesn't make sense to me.
And I think this is why so many of those that are excommunicated do feel very bitter, is because they, in many cases, like, they wanted to stay a part of the church. They wanted to believe everything. They wanted the church to conform to them, not them conform to the church, which goes back to the root of what we're talking about today. And that is that when there is something in your belief system that through the prophets has been revealed and taught that doesn't align with what feels good to you, that should be expected. It's not something that we should automatically say, oh, that doesn't feel good. That's the Spirit telling me it's wrong.
Right.
That's a very easy deception that we can fall into.
Yeah. A couple thoughts that I have. One specifically is in regard to the prophet. I believe it was Wilford Woodruff that said, if I ever were to teach something that was not correct, God would remove me from my place as the prophet. And if I actually believe that as a member, then I've got to believe that the doctrine that the prophets have been teaching, specifically, polygamy, or, well, another big one right now is the nuclear family versus, gay or lesbian relationships. Whatever it is, what's been taught been pretty consistent over the history of the world. If that's what's been taught from the prophet, and I believe that God would actually take that person out of that position if he was teaching incorrect principles, then I've got to look at myself for the inconsistency, not the prophet as a whole. So that's just one thought that I've had. The other is that this has been a good reminder, and I've been thinking about this a lot within the last couple of weeks as I've been just kind of researching and studying different topics, is that I don't know as much as I think I do, and I don't have as strong a testimony as I think I do. Not that I don't have a strong testimony, but just a broader understanding of each and every topic and doctrine. I've been learning a lot more recently that has shown me just how little I know, and it's been encouraging, actually, and enlightening to learn more about what I know and the lack that I have. That has helped me kind of want to grow and learn more as well. So recognizing that I may have some inconsistencies in some of those doctrines or principles allows me to take the kind of self-reflection and see what do I need to fix in my life or fix in my thinking to more accurately align myself with God. And that's what I think you're getting at, is some people have the lack of that self-reflection to align with God because they want God to align with them.
Exactly. We try to create God in our own image, right?
Right.
And we just need to be very, very careful of that. And so many people, they are only willing to look at, for gospel doctrine related things like specific evidence, and they will only look at that evidence that affirms their belief and their understanding. And then when you do that, it's like, oh yeah, like this seems so clear. Like this is just so how could this be any other way? And verse, if they're humble enough to really say, okay, I know this is uncomfortable, but being able to sit in that discomfort and not reject it outright as a lack of the Spirit, because it's not a lack of the Spirit.
Yeah.
It might be a lack of our understanding of truth, and we should continually seek further light and knowledge. Even Adam and Eve. I mean, like, God puts them on earth, and then we'll come again, but good luck until we come again. Or like, we have to continually be seeking further light and knowledge. And you had mentioned kind of the hope in change in regard to homosexuality. That's where I think that's really a dangerous hope to try to give people, because basically it's saying, you view this way, and so let's just hope that God conforms to that. God's going to conform to your view of the world, and I have a really hard time seeing that ever happening. No, I mean, I'm not going to say that it couldn't. I mean, like, I don't want to put demands on God, but I still, based on the pattern of all human history and life, like, it seems like something we should not be trying to give someone hope for in that regard.
Well, and that's where God is consistent, right? He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And if we really believe that, then I can't live my life hoping that God's going to conform to what I believe in any topic. If you put that on any different topic, this one lady we talked about polygamy, in any aspect, what if it's, you can see how on a broader scale this is a problem, where if I say, well, I can lie, we'll take the Ten Commandments. These are probably easy ones for us to say, well, that's not right. But on a broad scale, this concept that we're talking about is, if I say, well, if God's going to conform to me, I should be able to lie, or I should be able to kill. I can, steal. And I think that God's actually okay with that. I'm just waiting for the time for the prophet to say, let's change this because that's actually okay. Like, clearly that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So if that's how it works in these other ones, these other doctrines, it's a doctrine for a reason. It's the truth, right? That was one of the things you said at the very beginning, is the doctrine is the truth, not your truth or my truth or somebody else's truth. It is the truth that God has installed into our world and the universe, and it's the truth that we're all here. And I can't change that just because I want it to be the way I live my life.
Yeah.
Whether it's the Ten Commandments that we pretty much all universally live by, or if it's polygamy, or gay rights, or abortion, or whatever it is.
Regardless of when you live on earth, there are going to be cultural trends that are antithetical to true doctrine. And because we grow up in those trends, currently homosexuality is a big one. I know polygamy has been in the news recently. Like, those are the things that we're grappling with today. But at any time, there's going to be things. I mean, Abrahamic tests, right? I mean, like God pushes his people to an edge, and we should expect to be pushed to the edge.
Yeah.
And rather than reject God and his doctrine and his teachings, we should humbly pray and seek his will. And where we do struggle and where we do not align right, rather than fighting against his church that we believe in and know is ordained of God, rather than fighting against the structure that he's put in place,
right,
we should be like sheep. I mean, like he is the good shepherd.
Right. Yeah.
And I know that people try to parse or split apart and say, well, the church isn't Christ, and Christ is, I follow Christ before I follow the church. It's like, but do you believe this is the Lord's church?
Yeah.
And if you believe this is the Lord's church, then not saying it's perfect, because people are imperfect, but the core doctrines, those are eternal truths.
Yeah. The church is perfect. The doctrines of the church is perfect.
Yes.
It's the people and how we organize ourselves that struggles with that. I love that you brought up the analogy of the shepherd and us being sheep, because my where my mind went with that was, I don't want to be a sheep.
It's kind of a negative
You know,
connotation in other
like,
contexts, right?
yeah, you know, I do want to be a sheep. I want to be one of the Lord's sheep. But my natural mindset is I want to rebel against whatever that is. And so, and this fits perfectly in the imagery of being a sheep and Christ being the shepherd, because it's when you have that one sheep that says, you know what, I know where we're going, and rather than following the rest of the herd, I think I've got a different route that's better, right? That way's not right, but this way is going to be good. So I'm going to go this way, and I actually think I'm right. So let me take a couple other people with me, and we're going to go this way. And that's when the sheep get lost, and that's when the good shepherd has to leave the rest of the group and say, I'm going to go find that one lost sheep because he went the wrong way. And it's that rebellion of, I don't want to be a follower. I want to be the one that's leading. It's part of that power grab, almost like we want to have the power. We want to be the one in control, in charge. And when that's what we're trying to do, we're trying to be the one that has the doctrine and has all of the knowledge. I mean, we want to have the knowledge, but when we want to be almost the source of that, where we're teaching other people what is against the truth, the doctrine, that's when the shepherd has to come and save us, because we've gone down a totally different path.
Yeah.
Right? So that's just kind of what I was thinking of as you mentioned that analogy. And maybe I'm one of those lost sheep a little more often than I want to be.
I like where you went with that. So we have the authority, the good shepherd, and he's leading and guiding. And sometimes when we teach and strive to keep the principles of the gospel that he has taught, to some it comes across as hubris, or it comes across as too authoritative, like we're taking people's agency away. Like, how can you take someone's agency away? You can't tell them they have to live that way. Like, you know, and people do this all the time. It's like you're telling me to be too strict. I just can't do that. It's too restrictive, and we forget that we're allowing agency. The whole plan of salvation is agency, and nothing I say or do can take that agency away. You have your agency to make choices, and I have to honor that. But it reminds me of a quote from Joseph Smith, and this was when people were claiming that he was being too authoritative and too restricting and whatnot. And he says, "We teach correct principles and let people govern themselves." And I think sometimes we get too bent up over, like, they're not keeping the commandments right now, or they're leaving the church right now, or they're doing this, and like, all we can do is teach correct principles and let people govern themselves. And if they leave for a time, that's their choice. Hopefully they come back. We don't leave the doctrine to go get them. We stick to the doctrine. And yes, we want to.
We hope they come back.
We hope they come back, and we want to extend olive leaves, out to as many people as we can.
Right.
But to try and change doctrine just so that they're more comfortable and then they want to come back, that's not the way it works.
It's the more that we're talking about this, the more that imagery of the shepherd and the sheep comes to mind, because I think it's so easy to think about in terms of the straight and narrow path, right? You've got this. We'll say this sheep herd that are going down the path, and you've got someone that doesn't belong to the herd, right? Or doesn't accept the herd-like mentality, that's doing their own thing outside, and they're yelling, "Hey, come over here. It's better over here. It's not so restrictive. The grass is greener.
Oh, it feels good.
Yeah, we've got better food.
We're in control.
I can do whatever I want. I don't have these, those annoying dogs chasing after me, telling me to get back in line. We can be our own leader, and what we learn about agency is, like you said, we can choose to go. The herd will always be there. We can always come back, right? That's the blessing. That's the beauty of the atonement about the gospel is Christ allows us to always come back. But part of the learning experience of life is that when we do choose to leave or make that bad decision, life typically gets a little bit more difficult. You realize that there's a cliff on the other side that you didn't see, and then you tumble down, or there's a lot more thorns in that side of the area that you didn't realize, and then eventually, hopefully, you either work your way back or you go further away, and as you come back, the herd is excited to see you back, right? Yeah. The shepherd's excited they say, "Come back, we're happy you're here," rather than, "Oh no, he's back again." I don't know. That imagery is just sticking in my mind as we're talking right now.
Yeah, and continuing on a little bit with that imagery, specifically in the same-sex attraction realm, because this is a place where I think a lot of people have a hard time with it.
Yeah.
And they just hope that the church changes, and they hope for that change. And I think one of the root causes of that is that if you see a homosexual couple that is fully committed and, they can be fantastic, amazing, and good people, and if they're not in that relationship, then they're having no sexual fulfillment in life and no deeper connection. And so there's a lot of good that's coming from that, and people are unable to see the potential pitfalls of that.
Right.
Like when that sheep goes off on the path, it feels good, and it's liberating, and it is exciting, and so there's all these good things initially, and when it comes to same sex, because of the culture that we live in and just the nature of it right now, people don't see the negative side of it.
Right.
They don't understand the eternal consequences, and or even in life the consequences of children, and not the sadness that comes from not having posterity. And a large part of that is because people aren't having kids at all. Normal couples are not finding the joy of posterity either, because the childhood rates are way down.
They've dropped a lot.
So Kendall earlier basically called himself a goat. I'm a goat too, a lot of the time. Is a goat, when someone says "Man, you're the goat," is that actually a positive term in culture these days?
Well, I mean, when typically you think of that like sports, like greatest of all time, right?
They're the goat.
Like MJ's the goat.
Okay, see, because that's kind of funny, because sheep, in modern day analogies, like when I said sheep, you actually had a negative connotation first, right?
Right.
Oh, I don't want to be a sheep. But then also, in ancient times, the sheep were the followers, and the goats were the ones that were always getting off and into trouble, right? And so that's why I said you were a goat, is because you said you were going apostate or rebellious in nature.
Right.
But
I think of goat as someone that gets pulled along sometimes to their death.
So I'm going to call you the goat, and you can decide whether it's a positive or a negative.
Sounds good.
So what in your life are you wrestling with? Feel free to share. We'd be happy to get some ideas for further topics to discuss if there's things that you're...
Yeah, comment below and give us some ideas of what we should talk about, and maybe delve into specific topics or doctrines and things like that, because we'd love to hear from what our listeners are thinking and going through. But like and subscribe, share with your friends and family, and we'll see you next time. This is the No Bushel Podcast.